Chapters 71 and 72 of The Way of All Flesh. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Rhonda Fetterman. The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler. Chapter 71. It seems he had been patrolling the streets for the last 3 or 4 nights. I suppose in search of something to do. At any rate, knowing better what he wanted to get than how to get it. Nevertheless, what he wanted was in reality so easily to be found that it took a highly educated scholar like himself to be unable to find it. But however this may be, he had been scared, and now saw lions where there were none, and was shocked and frightened, and night after night his courage had failed him, and he had returned to his lodgings at Laystall Street without accomplishing his errand. He had not taken me into his confidence upon this matter, and I had not inquired what he did with himself in the evenings. At last he had concluded that, however painful it might be to him, he would call on Mrs. Jupp, who he thought would be able to help him if any one could. He had been walking moodily from 7 till about 9, and now resolved to go straight to Ashpit Place, and make a mother confessor of Mrs. Jupp without more delay. Of all the tasks that could be performed by mortal woman, there was none which Mrs. Jupp would have liked better than the one Ernest was thinking of imposing upon her. Nor do I know that in his scared and broken-down state he could have done much better than he now proposed. Miss Jupp would have made it very easy for him to open his grief to her. Indeed, she would have coaxed it all out of him before he knew where he was. But the fates were against Mrs. Jupp, and the meeting between my hero and his former landlady was postponed sine die, for his determination had hardly been formed, and he had not gone more than 100 yards in the direction of Mrs. Jupp's house, when a woman accosted him. He was turning from her as he had turned from so many others, when she started back with a movement that aroused his curiosity. He had hardly seen her face, but being determined to catch sight of it, followed her as she hurried away, and passed her. Then turning around, he saw that she was none other than Ellen, the housemaid who had been dismissed by his mother 8 years previously. He ought to have assigned Ellen's unwillingness to see him to its true cause, but a guilty conscience made him think she had heard of his disgrace, and was turning away from him in contempt. Brave as has been his resolutions about facing the world, this was more than he was prepared for. "What, you too shun me, Ellen?" he exclaimed. The girl was crying bitterly, and did not understand him. "Oh, Master Ernest," she sobbed, "let me go. You are too good for the likes of me to speak to now." "Why, Ellen," he said, "what nonsense you talk. You haven't been in prison, have you?" "Oh, no, 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 not so bad as that," she exclaimed passionately. "Well, I have," said Ernest, with a forced laugh. "I came out 3 or 4 days ago after 6 months with hard labor." Ellen did not believe him, but she looked at him with a "Lor, Master Ernest," and dried her eyes at once. The ice was broken between them, for as a matter of fact Ellen had been in prison several times, and though she did not believe Ernest, his merely saying he had been in prison made her feel more at ease with him. For her there were 2 classes of people, those who had been in prison and those who had not. The first she looked upon as fellow creatures and more or less Christians. The second, with few exceptions, she regarded with suspicion, not wholly unmingled with contempt. Then Ernest told her what had happened to him during the last 6 months, and by she believed him. "Master Ernest," said she, after they had talked a quarter of an hour or so, "there is a place over the way where they sell tripe and onions. I know you was always fond of tripe and onions. Let's go over and have some, and we can talk better there." So the pair crossed the street and entered the tripe shop. Ernest ordered supper. "And how is your poor dear mamma, and your dear papa, Master Ernest?" said Ellen, who had now recovered herself and was quite at home with my hero. "Oh dear, dear me," she said, "I did love your pa. He was a good gentleman, he was, and your ma too. It would do anyone good to live with her, I'm sure." Ernest was surprised and hardly knew what to say. He had expected to find Ellen indignant at the way she had been treated, and inclined to lay the blame of her having fallen to her present state at his father's and mother's door. It was not so. Her only recollection of Battersby was as a place where she had had plenty to eat and drink, not too much hard work, and where she had not been scolded. When she heard that Ernest had quarrelled with his father and mother, she assumed as a matter of course that the fault must lie entirely with Ernest. "Oh, your poor, poor ma," said Ellen. "She was always so very fond of you, Master Ernest. You was always her favourite. I can't bear to think of anything between you and her. To think now of the way she used to have me into the dining room and teach me my catechism, that she did. Oh, Master Ernest, you really must go and make it all up with her, indeed you must." Ernest felt rueful, but he had resisted so valiantly already that the devil might have saved himself the trouble of trying to get at him through Ellen in the matter of his father and mother. He changed the subject, and the pair warmed to one another as they had their tripe and pots of beer. Of all people in the world, Ellen was perhaps the one to whom Ernest could have spoken most freely at this juncture. He told her what he thought he could have told no one else. "You know, Ellen," he concluded, "I had learnt as a boy things I ought not to have learnt, and had never had a chance of that which would have set me straight." "Gentlefolks is always like that," said Ellen musingly. "I believe you are right, but I am no longer a gentleman, Ellen, and I don't see why I should be like that any longer, my dear. I want you to help me to be like something else as soon as possible." "Lor, Master Ernest, whatever can you be meaning?" The pair soon afterwards left the eating-house and walked up Fetter Lane together. Ellen had had hard times since she had left Battersby, but they had left little trace upon her. Ernest saw only the fresh-looking smiling face, the dimpled cheek, the clear blue eyes, and the lovely sphinx-like lips which he had remembered as a boy. At 19 she had looked older than she was. Now she looked much younger. Indeed, she looked hardly older than when Ernest had last seen her, and it would have taken a man of much greater experience than he possessed to suspect how completely she had fallen from her first estate. It never occurred to him that the poor condition of her wardrobe was due to her passion for ardent spirits, and that first and last she had served 5 or 6 times as much time in jail as he had. He ascribed the poverty of her attire to the attempts to keep herself respectable, which Ellen during supper had more than once alluded to. He had been charmed with the way in which she had declared that a pint of beer would make her tipsy, and had allowed herself to be forced into drinking the whole after a good deal of remonstrance. To him she appeared a very angel dropped from the sky, and all the more easy to get on with for being a fallen one. As he walked up Fetter Lane with her towards Laystall Street, he thought of the wonderful goodness of God towards him in throwing in his way the very person of all others whom he was most glad to see, and whom of all others, in spite of her living so near him, he might never have fallen in with but for a happy accident. When people get it into their heads that they are being especially favoured by the Almighty, they had better as a general rule mind their P's and Q's, and when they think they see the devil's drift with more special clearness, let them remember that he has had much more experience than they have, and is probably meditating mischief. Already during supper the thought that in Ellen at last he had found